Palantir is a big bubble just waiting to pop. I don't think people actually understand how expensive it is.
Is ridiculous. You can talk about paradigm shit, you can talk about AI, you can ontology. It doesn't fucking matter. You cannot be paying $95 billion for a company barely doing 500 million in profits. What Palantir down 4 or 5%, down from 44 to 41. Just what are your raw thoughts on
all
price
the
action?
Twitter is suddenly convinced now that Palantir is a bubble. And it doesn't need to take a genius to realize that the valuation is actually expensive at 30x sales, 80 more EV free cash flow. But it's fair to say it is expensive. And when something becomes expensive, you have volatility because people say, oh, we are in green. Essentially, all Palantir investors are in green. And on the other side, you have bears that are just, oh, Palantir is overvalued, Palantir is a bubble, blah, 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 blah. But isn't it similar to what we saw at the bottom where people were saying, oh, Palantir is a trash, Palantir is overvalued, and stuff like that. But essentially, no one really tries to match the price with what is currently really going on with the real story of the business. Because if someone said, look, I'm aware of the Palantir story. I'm aware of the product. I'm aware of how good they are making on the business side. Yet, I don't believe the company is set to grow this much for this reason, this other reason, and this other reason. I could say, okay, it's worth listening to your opinion because you made me understand that you realize that the potential is there, but it's too much what is currently priced in. But when a lot of people that don't really understand the business at a granular level as just scream overvalued here, overvalued there, bubble here, bubble there. That makes me think we are in a situation similar to what NVIDIA faced, where the multiples were high, but only if you understood the dynamic of the business, you realized that the business is benefiting from a real paradigm shift. And I believe Palantir is still in this paradigm shift that started last year, and we are just at the beginning of it. A simple.
So Arnie, Arnie, what if someone pushes back and says everything you're saying is bullshit? 30 times price to sales is ridiculous. You can talk about paradigm shit, you can talk about AI, you can ontology. It doesn't fucking matter. You cannot be paying $95 billion for a company barely doing 500 million in profits. What is your response to that in regards to the stock price?
Well, it is true based on the past. It is true that the multiples are expensive given the analyst expectations. Yet there are two things. Analysts have been proved wrong and more wrong on understanding the company business, apart from very rare exception. See Dan Ives, see Mariana. But the average analyst has been very wrong on understanding the company. And the analyst estimates in general are still stuck to the estimates that we saw 2 years ago. Like more than 1 year ago, the story was completely different. Like there is literally Palantir before AAP and Palantir after AAP. If you think Palantir after AAP, that is currently growing at 25, 27%, ex-SPACs already at 30%, is set to decrease speed at this point, I think you don't fully capture the story. Because it's not only that Palantir is growing while the entire industry of SaaS is still withdrawing. Palantir is that company, that single company, that is delivering what everybody is talking about, which is AI agents. But so far, no one else, apart from Palantir, has actually shown real evidence of big business value unlocked thanks to AI agents. I think Sham, in the latest CNBC interview, where in the first minutes, he immediately said, look, we deployed 78 agents for this very, very big US insurance. And the underwriting process, which is not like a marginal business side for the insurance, like that is definitely a core business. If your underwriting time goes from 2 weeks to 3 hours, that is an effing 100x improvement in your core business. How do you improve your business? With AI, and Palantir shows that at scale with a bigger customers. So I think what we will see in the earnings call will be what Sham did in this first minute, but reiterated, underscoring, okay, everybody says this is what we have done for this client, this other client, and this other client. Meanwhile, you have the Salesforce of the world saying, oh, yes, we deploy AI agents for everything you want to do. Yes, but what's the value? Can you quantify the value of your one agent to the big scale of the enterprise? Because that's the point.
Right.
There are companies that provide the tools, but there is Palantir providing value, quantifying that value in relationship to the core business of that company. So I believe despite the company is expensive per se on the current multiples, the current multiples reflect estimates that are still relatively low and stuck to pre-AAP, while the business has completely changed, which means if estimates increase, the profit margins expected increase, the multiples completely change. And in terms of story, it is only now that on the ontology started being appreciated, Palantir as an AI company started being appreciated. And I personally believe that rather than seeing a decelerating growth, we will see a feedback loop that reinforces the growth. The brand Palantir has right now is at least 5x stronger than the brand it currently had last year at the beginning of the year. Now it is in the S&P 500, it's crazy profitable, and it has already a lot of big clients showcases for them, which means in aggregate that the friction to get the marginal client are heavily reduced. So how valuable is that?
I agree. I agree with everything you said. I think we're entering a new paradigm shift. The market is underestimating, or the people calling it a bubble are underestimating how important that paradigm shift is and how much growth they can have. From a numbers perspective, look, I think a lot of people want to be the knight in shining armor of calling the top on Palantir so they can laugh at people when Palantir has a pullback, which is probably inevitable because every stock has pullbacks eventually. I don't think unless we see a 50% drawdown that this run to 44 has been a bubble. Because like otherwise, what's a bubble? Like, is a 25% drop a bubble? Because that's ridiculous. No, obviously not. Like when Palantir went from 45 to 6, obviously at 45, Palantir was in a bubble, but the whole market was in a bubble. So if we see Palantir go from 44, if it topped out at 44 to around 26, 27, then I can say, yes, the run from 27 to 44 was based on irrational hype momentum of buying, given that Palantir is the only stock that follows 50% and not the broader market, because if the broader market falls, then the whole market was in a bubble, which is a totally different situation. But if we don't get back to that mid 25 to 30 range, call it 25 to 29, that's like an actual technical 50% drawdown, then I think it would be a pullback, right? Mm-hmm. From to 35, that's a 25% pullback. To 30, that's looking at closer to a 38, 37% pullback. Those are pullbacks that happen in stocks throughout the history of every single stock that has exponential gains. But Tesla at $1 trillion in 2021 was a bubble because it just didn't justify $1 trillion at the time. And we saw a 60% drawdown. We've been having this debate on, is Palantir Tesla in 2021? I don't think it is. If we fall back into the 20s, I was wrong. And it was a bit bubblish as we ran up to 44. I do think that the growth they're going to put up, along with the market sentiment around AI, along with every dollar we go down, there's going to be dip buyers that are going to get really excited to buy Palantir at 33, 34, 35, because when you look at Palantir and you think it's a $500-600 billion company, buying it at 30 versus 40 doesn't make that much of a difference. I think that's going to continue the momentum. But all of this is based on Q3 earnings. If Q3 earnings sucks, then the stock run up to 44, even with S&P inclusion, was a bubble. If Q3 earnings is at least 30% or more, I think we're not in a bubble.
Two simple questions. One, is the AI momentum decreasing?
I mean, with dude, the amount of articles I've seen this week of companies getting ridiculous, crazy valuations for like barely having a company. We in our group chat, right? You've seen some of these random AI agent stock raise $100 million. If these guys are getting this much money, it means there is so much liquidity that's looking for AI growth, and all of them are going to realize Palantir is the actual answer. And I think if that's the case, then Palantir is going to show the growth.
My second question was, okay, you are a fund manager in public markets. What are your alternatives?
You can't just buy NVIDIA, dude. You can't just justify buying NVIDIA. It's just like you got to have new ideas. And NVIDIA is useless unless there's software to justify the GPUs. We've said this over and over again. It's not Datadog. It's not ServiceNow. It's not Snowflake. It's not Intuit. It's not, maybe it's Salesforce. We'll see how their numbers turn out, right? Salesforce has to show agents or agent force is actually growing top line results. If it's Palantir, then it's just a stock that's going to be expensive for a long time. And I think a lot of the people that are saying it's a bubble are going to be very humbled. Either we're going to be humbled, Arnie, you and me, when it goes back to 25, like, oh, but I think in that humbling, we're going to buy more shares, right? As long as there's not like a crazy thesis breaker. Or these people that are shorting it on Twitter are going to claim victory when it goes to 35. And it's like, okay, so a stock fell 20%. Mm-hmm. Congrats. But for the people calling a top, you need to, or a bubble, you need to see a drawdown back to 25. If we don't get there, I don't.
What's your reaction into seeing that a post like this, Palantir is a big bubble just waiting to pop? I don't think people actually understand how expensive it is at 39x, but it's not the post per se that captured my attention. Like, okay, fine, like just another one. But these numbers, like 1000K likes, but with mine also.
Yeah, I was about to say, Arnie, are you cheating on us liking this photo? I'm just kidding.
And 400,000 people looking at this stuff, 300 comments. And it's also like, wow, like everybody is so convinced. What's your reaction to this?
For Matt in the chat who says, bro, why is Amit rocking back and forth? It's because I do blow. That's why I rock back and forth. Number two, no, I'm just kidding. I just said, I don't know, I have ADHD, whatever it is. I like this because that means a lot of people think that it's a bubble. And that means, again, just like the market this year, people have been so willing to call a top and the market has just gone higher because there's so much fear in the market. I think same thing with Palantir. If there's this much fear that at $44, which me and Arnie are both saying it is expensive, but if there's that many people saying, oh my God, it's going to collapse back to 20, then that means the group think the herd is following one side. And usually you want to go the opposite of the herd.
Mm-hmm. Okay. For instance, I was also impressed by this post. I made the poll, Palantir is a bubble. And out of 1,600 votes, 35% said bubble. What's interesting about this? That my audience is very, very Palantir-centric. So you would expect like a very big hell no. Yet 35% bubble means that probably if you remove the bias from the Palantir audience, there are literally a very, very big number of people pointing to, hey, Palantir is a bubble.
So two things. Number one, I need to record you saying bubble and make it my ringtone because there's just something beautiful about listening. I'm enamored by it right now. Number two, I agree. You and me both know retail that have messaged us saying, hey, they're taking profits, which is fair. The stock goes up 150% in a year, you're going to take profits. So your audience, that's mainly retail, same with my audience. Some of them are probably saying bubble because they're taking profits and they're saying, hey, this is like getting a little bit bubblish right now, which again is fair to say. The problem is no one wants to actually put their foot in the ground. So for example, this guy who's shorting Palantir, under my post today, he said, I'm short Palantir. I was like, okay, so where do you think it's going to be in a year? He was like, it'll be from 18 to 35. And I was like, what type of short like seller are you? Like actually have some conviction here. Because if it goes to 35, a 25% drawdown, newsflash, is not a bubble. That happens in the stock market. Stocks go down by, on average, 20 to 30%. But to say it's going from 18 to 35, to me, he's trying to like save himself from sounding like an idiot if it never gets to 18 by saying this obscure range that covers a lot of numbers. It's just like, this is stupid, right? I think a lot of people are afraid to legitimately say that it's going back down to 20.
And let's short something with a 25% upside, like in this case downside, to while getting a possibility of getting screwed at an infinite level. Very smart.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like because with short selling, obviously, if the stock doesn't go the direction you want to go, your max loss is infinite, right? And so the short float has increased, though. I don't know if people saw this post I put on Twitter. By the way, if you guys are still here, thank you 300 people for rocking with us. Let me put Arnie's Twitter right here in the chat. If you haven't watched the video that Arnie and I did on my channel last week, it's the last video on my channel. It's the Italian investor who went all in on Palantir, so please make sure to check that out. The short float is up 45% in the past 2 weeks. So the short float is still only 4.5% of the company, but the growth of the short float is up. What is your perspective on that, Arnie?
Well, I think Keith mentioned that. Like, be ready when the stock goes up, that you will be like completely surrounded by bears that will start roaring here and there. But I would say, at the end of the day, if money keeps flowing into the AI theme, Palantir keep showing business momentum, that only helps the liquidity of the stock. So good to see. Yep. Like if we invert this 5% percentage float is additional future buyers of the stock if the stock keeps going up, because they will be forced to buy.